Thanks for joining us for Emerging Trends to Recruit International Students. I am Cheryl Darrup-Boychuck, head of U.S. Journal and Funds V. I wanted to start off with a post from the NAFSA forum in their International Enrollment Management Knowledge Community. It was a post by George Kasenga from the University of Colorado at Denver. And I really encourage you to read his thoughtful request for best practices in meeting the demands of our superiors for how to clearly articulate how to measure return on investment in international recruitment. He says, "It remains a hefty prospect to be charged with boiling it down to a number, a figure, that when assessed by third parties will likely impact budget increases or not. Is that ROI outcome expected to be a dollar amount, or count per lead, per applicant, per admitted student, or enrollee? Is the response given to be only anecdotal narrative? I understand asking the questions about return on investment, and I too want the answers so I can fine-tune my strategy, but I still haven't found an entirely satisfactory approach. Have you?" George breaks down his activities into lead generation and yield activity. These two efforts are necessarily intertwined, but often suffer from disconnects. Our supervisors may not also care to factor email responses, credential evaluation turnaround times, scholarship amounts and availability, or time spent Skyping and responding through social media in the ROI equation, although it remains our job to emphasize these as relevant factors in the calculation of ROI. Defining the ROI metrics is perhaps the most important part of the exercise. Are we building a class and campus community, or are we designing for a set number of students in seats? For many, the goal is most likely to be somewhere in between. Both goals have merit and are realities in tuition-driven, tighter budget environments. ROI is rarely delivered in terms of absolute values because it is a function of campus history, resources, and perspective. On your campus, it might be worth spending thousands of dollars for a few international students in the interest of diversity, and the ROI is perceived as excellent. On other campuses, that may be an inexcusable affront given other fiscal realities. ROI assessments are not meant to be an indictment regarding which outcome is worthwhile, but rather are meant to address the lingering ambiguity about how to achieve the desired outcome through the most fiscally astute means possible. So George is working on a systematic approach to the ROI equation, and he welcomes your feedback. So George articulates a keen frustration among many colleagues. I do think a talented data wonk will eventually create a calculus-inspired formula for measuring ROI in international recruitment that considers all of the variables he mentioned. The numerical values of those variables would need to be defined by the recruiter on each individual campus. For example, one campus may place greater weight on enrolling a student from a country that is not currently represented on campus if diversity is a stated goal. So boosting diversity may positively impact a college's ranking, which may very well lead to higher enrollments in and of itself. It's complicated. The objective of developing such an equation for our purposes would be twofold: to input actual data, which would help us calculate actual return on investment. Secondly, we could use the equation as more of a predictive model when we input our best guesses as opposed to actual data. In the meantime, perhaps the best we can do is assemble a toolbox of case studies. We've come up with 3 relatively simple ones from colleagues over the past few years. This chart speaks to the trend toward quality over quantity. This colleague initially learned about this particular agent from Busan at an agent workshop in Miami. That first interaction wasn't particularly positive, but he ended up participating in one of the agent's events in Busan, which went well. He then booked a summer presentation in Busan exclusively for his campus, where 10 students showed up. He thought, what a waste. Within a month, however, 4 of those students enrolled, with each one spending 3 years at his campus. So from the chart, you can see that the college invested more than $10,000 before recognizing any profit whatsoever. Ultimately, the ROI was about $35,000. I honestly think that the U.S. growth in agent use, aside from the obvious NACAC decision, can be partially attributed to the relative ease in measuring ROI. Tracking students and their corresponding tuition dollars is infinitely easier to do when using agents as compared with practically any other recruitment initiative. The next case study deals with domestic travel, which includes participation in NAFSA conferences, visits to foreign embassies in DC, and establishing relationships with sponsoring programming agencies like Fulbright or the Ford Foundation. Sometimes those sponsoring agencies require some sort of discount on tuition, which would of course impact your bottom line ROI. In this case, the Saudis did not require any discounts. So anecdotally, this type of recruitment activity generated the most impressive ROI. The direct result was 20 students from Saudi Arabia who enrolled in an English language program where tuition was $6,800 per year, or about $136,000, plus fees of $350 per student, or an additional $7,000. The ROI came in at nearly $142,000. The rest of the story on this particular case study is that for one reason or another, the majority of those Saudi students did not stay at this campus to complete their studies. So another flaw in any oversimplified ROI formula relates to the fact that retention rates impact your ROI exponentially, and those factors should certainly be considered. Moving on to another case study, this one deals with an online promotion where you pay an annual fee for an unspecified quantity of inquiries. In this case, the cost of a 12-month online English-only campaign was $1,195. The advertiser happened to be an English as a second language program on the West Coast. Enrolling just one student for a 10-week session would have more than paid for the cost of the campaign. Tuition was $2,800 per session plus $465 in student fees, so the return on investment for the first student was about $2,000. The profit after enrolling 5 students was about $15,000. Ultimately, the advertiser enrolled 10 students for an impressive ROI of $32,000 over the course of that 1 year. Here's another way to look at it. This bar graph shows how the cost of advertising remains the same over the course of the annual campaign. It's a one-time investment. Over time, the returns increase exponentially as more students are enrolled as a result of the online promotion. So as a percentage in the big picture, that original cost of advertising is just a small fraction of the total revenue generated by that particular initiative. A big reason why measuring ROI has been getting trickier lately, particularly for online promotions, so much is going on off of our radar screens on social media. Stealth applicants, for example, introduce a significant quantifiably elusive factor in our quest to measure return on investment in international recruitment. Prospective students may prefer to click directly to the application on the .edu domain. With regard to social media, it's more important than ever to consider how fresh the friends and followers and likes are, rather than just look at the overall volume of interest, which may have accumulated over years and years. We've taken a very deliberate approach to Facebook and Twitter. We feature one of our advertisers per day, plus special events. We continuously and proactively pull content from our advertisers' channels. Striking images are always winners. Once those prospective students get to your .edu domain, after you've worked so hard to capture their fleeting attention, you've got to serve them well, with a simple admissions process. This Forbes article noted that consumers crave simplicity. The key to positively impacting purchasing decisions and brand loyalty is to simplify the purchasing process. Clearly, there's a lot of room for improvement in streamlining the admissions process, and significant opportunity to differentiate from your peer institutions. We need to consider the currently complicated operations end of the equation and maximize efficiencies where we can. We desperately need to take advantage of technology to streamline the operations of every element within international enrollment management. With the transparent nature of the marketing environment, prospective students must make their admissions decisions based on other factors, like a simple admissions process. I'd even go so far as to say that process will surpass promotion in terms of importance in advancing global student mobility. I think we'll get to the point very soon where student applicants will judge a campus, at least partially, based on the admissions process, the actual operations end. For example, how can you possibly boast about your innovative classes when you're still demanding that I send you paper documents? It just doesn't ring true. In the earliest part of the admissions process, we have two critical indicators. Is this student prepared from an academic perspective? And also, can the student prove sufficient funds to meet the requirements of the federal government? If we can efficiently address those two very basic indicators, then we as admissions counselors can devote more of our limited time and resources to the more nuanced segments of admissions and actually communicate with prospective students most likely to enroll. How does that happen? Let's look specifically at the funds verification component, which has traditionally been a paper-based process. Here's the 30-second intro to our funds verification initiative. About 8 years ago, our U.S. Journal client said, "We appreciate the inquiries you generate for us, but is there any way you can qualify those students financially earlier in the process so we can dedicate our limited resources to students most likely to be approved for their student visas?" Now that a significant portion of banking data around the world lives online, we've developed a solution. Obviously, there's a whole lot more involved. You're most welcome to join our next webinar. Details are always available on the About page at fundsv.com. The point is that emerging trends in international student recruitment involves much more than the pure marketing piece. It really is an exciting time in international education as everything we do from marketing to operations increasingly overlaps, and there's lots of opportunity for improvement. For example, have you considered the statistics in online language usage? Back in 1996, when U.S. Journal first went online, English speakers accounted for maybe 80% of the online population. Clearly, that's no longer the case. To recruit international students, you need to consider prospects and their parents whose native language is not English. Only about a quarter of all online users speak English as a native language. Chinese ranks a close second, coming in at 24% of all online users. Here's another corresponding set of statistics that substantiate the argument for targeted, translated content. I also want to refer back to our discussion on accurately measuring ROI. If you purchase an online multilingual promotional campaign designed to generate leads from a specific language market, then you can reuse those professional satisfaction guaranteed translations to complement content within your own .edu domain. And be sure to document those cost savings within your budget and within your ROI assessment. Global by Design is one of my favorite resource sites. They'll soon publish their latest web globalization report card, which charts how creatively global companies are responding to online language usage trends. Take a look at some of the sites from their list of best global websites. Google supports scores of languages. WordPress supports 70 languages. And actually in 2014, non-English downloads of WordPress surpassed English downloads. Definitely inspiring. U.S. Journal supports 16 languages. Depending on your recruitment goals and corresponding strategy, it may make sense to promote your programs in all of those translated sites, as we see in this example of Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Other campuses choose to promote specific programs to targeted language markets, as is the case with Columbia University's School of Continuing Education in New York. Not surprisingly, the more languages promoted, the more degrees listed, the higher the level of engagement. Just to give you an idea of the annual average numbers of click-throughs in yellow and submitted inquiries in red of our advertisers with different levels of multilingual campaigns. So clearly not all campuses can support inquiries in so many different languages. I'd argue that you still need to consider the language requirements of people within the sphere of influence of your prospective students. Indiana University handles this brilliantly. We recently completed a 7-language project for them, focusing on parent-facing information. We can certainly tap into our professional teams to handle your translation needs as well, with your satisfaction guaranteed. Of course, if you purchase language campaigns with us, you may use that translated profile any way you see fit. You can also choose our translation-only services. The University of Lincoln in the UK has one of the most comprehensive customized international recruitment pages that I've seen, with 61 individual countries listed, each with their own subpage. Click on Brazil and you get to meet Tiago, a current Lincoln student from Brazil. There is some translated content along with a list of Brazil-based agents that Lincoln works with. You can also find the itinerary for when Lincoln admissions counselors will be in Brazil to meet with students and parents. Pretty impressive. The point is that integrating all of your promotional campaigns can greatly improve your ROI. Integration can certainly complicate matters, but it'll likely improve your overall results. For example, our fare schedule has become one of the most popular pages within our site for both students and colleagues who are planning their itineraries for the next recruitment cycle. If our advertisers are traveling overseas to recruit, we can send invitations to the event on your behalf to students from that region within our database. So just give us a few weeks' notice and we'll push that content out via several channels at no additional cost. Each U.S. Journal campaign includes a profile page such as this one of Orange Coast College in California with a prominent inquiry form. There's no limit to the number of words, images, videos, or external links leading to your .edu domain. Each campaign also includes an academic program listing, which can be customized accordingly. There's no limit to the number of programs you promote with us. Here's why listing academic programs is important. This chart comes to us from the ICEF Monitor. Prospective students often search for their academic program first on global search engines, even before searching for campuses or even for specific countries. U.S. Journal has always been focused on quality over quantity of leads. Our goal has never been to generate a bazillion inquiries for our advertisers, but the ones we do generate have specifically expressed interest in your program. Here's one example of an inquiry who's living in Philadelphia, inquiring about the English Language Center at Drexel. I always encourage our advertisers to consider the right metrics when measuring the success of a campaign, which isn't always an exact science. U.S. Journal features a nice mix of advertisers from a geographical perspective, but also from a classification perspective. Major research universities, community colleges, top-notch four-year colleges, English language programs. We've actually visited many of these campuses and personally know at least some of the staff, so we have no problem recommending them without reservation. On your to-do list, review our promotional options online or contact me directly. Current advertisers should make sure we're connected with your other initiatives. Do consider multilingual options, join our upcoming webinars, and stay connected via your medium of choice. Ultimately, recruiters must allocate their budgets creatively, of course with the end game of enrollees in mind, but it's also important to consider value-added components of each campaign. Certainly appreciate your time. Whether you are a current advertiser or prospective advertiser, let us know what we can do for you. Enjoy the rest of your day.